Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the terrific pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm great, Brian. Looking forward to talking horses on another edition of HorseCenter.
Another edition of HorseCenter, Matt, and we are just 2 days removed from a huge day at Saratoga. It was Travers Day, but of course it was much more than that. 7 graded stakes, 6 of them grade 1, and the lone grade 2 of the day, Matt, also resulted in a pretty likable finish. Anyway, Matt, let's start with the Travers. I called it the best field of the year for the 3-year-old males. We would finally get a little clarity into the division. Maybe yes, maybe no. West Coast was the winner.
Certainly was, and maybe yes, maybe no is definitely the answer to the clarity part. Brian, West Coast came out and answered any questions that you or I or anybody else had about the level of racing that he had been performing at, and he took the Travers from gate to wire, and there was very little competition for him in the race, as it turned out.
Yeah, I think there's several interesting things, of course, coming out of this race, Matt. First, I want to say that there's a not too small amount of irony here in that Bob Baffert brought his great Triple Crown champion to the Travers just 2 years ago. American Pharoah, hounded by Frosted and then passed late by Keen Ice. The Travers was a disappointment, a huge disappointment for Bob Baffert and the team of American Pharoah. It was his only loss, his only career loss after his career debut. The Travers was the low point of the American Pharoah train to superstardom. Now, the next 2 years, the Travers has been all about Bob Baffert. Of course, last year, Arrogate. This year, West Coast. And much like Arrogate, West Coast, I didn't expect Arrogate to be on the lead in the Travers last year. I didn't expect West Coast to be on the lead this year.
Yeah, I didn't either, Brian. It was a surprise, but Mike Smith was like, hey, I know I got a big horse underneath me. It worked last year, so why not try it again? And it worked again, and the similarities don't end with just the way the race was run, Brian. The last 2 years, Baffert has brought in a horse that was relatively lightly raced, that did not run in the Triple Crown, that was late developing, and that certainly is no coincidence.
West Coast, now I've seen some people kind of put down the performance a little bit. First of all, kudos to Mike Smith. I think Mike Smith, maybe not, West Coast deserves credit. He was a clear winner. But without Mike Smith, without the ride by Mike Smith, obviously a heady ride considering how it all went down. And as I said, a little bit unexpected. West Coast wiring the field in the Travers. So we got to give some credit to clearly one of the best jockeys, if not the best jockey in American racing. He picks his spots a little bit. He doesn't ride nearly as much as a lot of his main counterparts for the best jockey in the country. But Mike Smith is phenomenal, and this was another good example of that. Now, I've seen people put down West Coast a little bit, at least as far as a 3-year-old male champion. And I'm not sure he deserves it. Now, the Travers was his first grade 1 win. But let's not forget, much like Arrogate, after his losing career debut, which wasn't bad, he really is this close, Matt, this close to rattling off 6 consecutive wins. Because if you remember the Lexington at Keeneland this spring, he had the race at the 8th pole. He had the race at the 16th pole. He shortened stride late, and Senior Investment just rushed by him in the last stride or two, probably the last stride. So West Coast is that close to having a 6-race winning streak. The Easy Goer, the Los Alamitos Derby were impressive, if not a little less competition. But now he's got the Travers, where he beat the best field, probably the fairest big 3-year-old race of the year. I'd say West Coast is the leader of this division. Other horses, Guinevere, ran a good race, not surprising to me. I think Saratoga is a track that he enjoys. He got freshened a little bit. IRAP came up a little short, but he seemed to run his race. Triple Crown horses, Always Dreaming, stalked, gave it up, really had no answer for the leader. He could have, I guess, gone faster early, but I don't necessarily think that would have helped. Cloud Computing looked much like he did in the Jim Dandy. Taprit ran a decent race, but not a champion race. Where are we as far as West Coast as the 3-year-old male champion, Matt?
Like you said, Brian, in these very murky waters of the 3-year-old division, it's time to let go of the winners of the Triple Crown races right now, because they just have not done very much. Although, like you said, Tappert's race was okay. And I do see maybe there's some possibility with him down the road, and they're looking at the Pennsylvania Derby and such. But right now, West Coast is the horse that has recency and the best performance in the Travers, which you described as having the best gathering of 3-year-olds of the year.
Maybe it's blasphemous for me to say this, Matt, but personally, I think this was the biggest win of any 3-year-old male of the year. Bigger than the Belmont, bigger than the Preakness, bigger than the Kentucky Derby. West Coast, I think people put too much stock into what's grade 1, what's grade 2, what's grade 3. So he is behind maybe the 8 ball a little bit with only one grade 1 win. And a horse like Taprit, if he were to win something big, Jockey Club Gold Cup would seem to make a lot of sense to me, as that race isn't going to come up super strong probably, and he's a 1.25 mile horse, and he's won at Belmont. But anyway, I think West Coast is the leader of the division, but a lot of people, in fact, maybe the majority of people right now would say, no, it's not these dirt horses that keep beating each other, guys. It's the turf horse. It's the Breeders' Cup juvenile turf champion, Oscar Performance. He's won 3 stakes in a row. He should be the 3-year-old male champion.
Well, he has certainly performed very, very well, Brian. I don't know if I'm one to want to give the 3-year-old division championship to a turf horse. And especially now with what's gone on with Arrogate and his invincibility, it has been shattered. I don't now, with that going on, I don't stop thinking now about a 3-year-old doing something in the Classic that could be the decision maker in the 3-year-old male division. When Arrogate was rolling, I didn't even consider a 3-year-old running in the Classic or having any chance to win it, but I don't know if that's the case now.
Yeah, you're right, Matt. That's a great point. Of course, we are just talking about what might happen here. I think it's interesting conversation because the 3-year-old male championship is one that people pay attention to a lot. It's kind of our glamour division in American horse racing. And you're right. I have the same feeling, Oscar Performance. I'd rather not give it to a turf horse. Oscar Performance recency is strong. Don't forget, though, his first 2 races of the year weren't very good. His 3rd race of the year, the Pennine Ridge, was not a grade 1. So he's got 2 grade 1s working. The Belmont Derby, very impressive, and then a strong win in the Secretariat as well out in Chicago. So Oscar Performance, personally, if I had to vote tomorrow, it would be for West Coast over Oscar Performance, and I think Oscar Performance would be my male turf champion. I think the older male turf horses in America are mediocre at best, and certainly have taken turns beating each other. So I think Oscar Performance might have a little better chance at that. Now, he's got some big races against older horses coming up, probably the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic and then the Breeders' Cup Turf. So Oscar Performance still has a chance to do a lot. Maybe he ends up sweeping the award, but he has to prove he can beat older horses. But like you said, there's a lot going on still in the year. There's the Penn Derby, there's the Jockey Club Gold Cup, there's the Breeders' Cup Classic, which is now more open than it looked to be a month or 2 ago. And then there's other races, maybe the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile or the Cigar Mile. And I think when we talk about that, we have to look at what Practical Joke did on Saturday in the formerly the King's Bishop, now it's the H. Allen Jerkins Memorial. Practical Joke did what we thought he'd do, Matt. He proved he's the best one-turn 3-year-old male in the country. Is he a candidate for 3-year-old male champion?
Well, Brian, like you said, he's now 4 for 4, going one turn. And there are some terrific races against older horses for him. Like you said, the Cigar Mile coming up in November, which looks like a race that he could very, very easily win and would be a feather in his cap. But again, I don't know. I probably would not want to vote for a sprinter to win the 3-year-old male division. But hey, this year, who knows? And then when you throw in there there's so much talk with so many of these horses about, maybe we're going to just train up to the Breeders' Cup. Well, okay, that's well and good if you win the big one in November. If you don't, then it makes it very hard for me to want to vote for you because you're not building a resume. So it's really, really tough this year.
It is, and I think Practical Joke, frankly, from my eye, is not there yet. Matt, he's actually 5 for 5 in one-turn races, 4 graded stakes, 3 of them are grade 1s. Now, this year, there's only 2 one-turn races on his resume. Impressive win in the Dwyer and an impressive win in the grade 1 Jerkins Memorial. He's 0 for 4 this year, 0 for 5 lifetime around 2 turns. But those 2-turn races were good. I mean, he was second in the Fountain Youth, second in the Bluegrass, a very good third in the Haskell, and a competitive 5th in the Kentucky Derby. But his resume's not there yet. But if he wins a couple more grade 1s around 1 turn before the year's over, maybe Practical Joke is a horse that could get back right into this picture. The Jerkins Memorial was a strong performance. He's kind of a horse who never flashes big wins. But it was clear as they straightened out he was going to win that race.
Yeah, that was a pretty big win, Brian. And another thing that I like about Practical Joke is that he runs, and he's run a lot of races. He seems to have a good bit of hickory in him, and they're not going to leave him sitting in the barn.
0 for 5 around 2 turns, 5 for 5 around 1 turn, 10 lifetime races. All 10 races were good, Matt. You're right. Practical Joke is a horse that we should be celebrating a little bit. And this was arguably his biggest win yet on Saturday at Saratoga. Speaking of big wins Saturday at Saratoga, Matt, I think we need to talk about probably the second most impactful race from Saturday at Saratoga, and that was the Personal Ensign. Songbird has long been the one, the best 2-year-old filly in the country far and away, the best 3-year-old filly in the country by a long shot the last 2 years. And until somebody knocked her off her spot on top, she was the best older dirt mare in the country. It happens in the Personal Ensign, Matt. And I'm impressed with Forever Unbridled. Again, we were not shocked by this. Forever Unbridled has just been improving and improving since being a good young filly. Now she's more than that. One of the best dirt horses in the country. Songbird, short field, had the lead, didn't run poorly. Forever Unbridled had to do the work in a 4-horse field of coming from last and running down quality lone speed, and she did it. That's impressive to me.
I agree, Brian, and she sure did. She sure did it. And once again, Joel Rosario rode her with utmost confidence. It's kind of like he's the engineer on a freight train, because she starts making her move, and it's just a steady, powerful, strong performance. And he came around the turn. He went wide, and he seemed to do it with purpose so that he was well clear of the eyesight of Songbird, so that she would have trouble seeing him and seeing her and engaging her down the stretch. And I don't know, Brian, she won pretty easily.
Yeah, she didn't pass Songbird until pretty late in the race, but to me, it looked like the whole stretch was her reeling Songbird in, and I was pretty confident she was going to get there at the 8th pole. She certainly did. Rosario was pumping away, but he never showed her the whip, never never hit her once. It was a big performance by an obviously very, very good older mare, bred beautifully. Lemons Forever, Unbridled Song. Matt, she's certainly, thinking back to what she did in the Breeders' Cup Distaff last year, she's certainly one of the leaders of this division now. Songbird's not out of it by any shot. Of course, we need to talk about Stellar Wind, but Forever Unbridled, if we're looking for a 1.25 mile horse, Matt, I'm just going to throw this out here. A 1.25 mile horse that can finish off a race for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Hey, maybe Forever Unbridled, she wins the Beldame like she's been running lately. Maybe she becomes a Breeders' Cup Classic possibility. Maybe you don't want to hear that, sir, but just a thought.
I saw it mentioned, Brian. You're not the only person to say it. I think trainer Dallas Stewart may have mentioned it a little bit too. He also mentioned that maybe he's not going to go to the Beldame. Maybe he's going to train up to the Breeders' Cup, which maybe isn't that unexpected because Forever Unbridled likes a lot of time between races, but I sure would like to see her run again before the Breeders' Cup.
Me too, Matt. 3 races in a season is not enough. She could be a champion if she wins the Breeders' Cup, regardless, with only 3 races. But as a fan, 3 races is not enough. So I hope she's at Belmont in September for the Beldame. I want to see that. Now, Matt, we talked about Songbird being knocked off the peg. Forever Unbridled now is 2 for 2 impressive wins, beating the champion, but only 1 Grade 1 this year. Meanwhile, Stellar Wind is 3 for 3 with 3 Grade 1 wins. Isn't she the leader of this division right now?
I think she is, Brian, and it's also worth noting that Stellar Wind is also 3 for 3 at Del Mar in her career. So Stellar Wind is a horse that we do not have to worry about liking the Del Mar surface. She loves the Del Mar surface.
Great point, Matt. She's won in California. 2 of those Grade 1s this year came in California. She's also won in Arkansas. So again, if the voting were to end today, I would give it to Stellar Wind, slightly over Forever Unbridled, slightly over Songbird. And Stellar Wind seems to be primed. She, of course, had the unfortunate start to last year's Breeders' Cup Distaff, the unfortunate bumping in the Breeders' Cup Distaff of 2 years ago. But she likes Del Mar, and she looks primed to be a major factor in the Breeders' Cup Distaff to win another champion. She's already won 1 championship. All right, Matt, we saw a lot of big races Saturday at Saratoga. One of the more impressive, of course, was Drefong. Drefong, the 3-year-old champion, the sprint champion as a 3-year-old from last year. Of course, he went coast to coast to win the King's Bishop and then the Breeders' Cup Sprint last year in impressive fashion. He's only had 2 races this year. The first one was kind of a throwout, despite the fact that I thought he showed a lot without his rider in that race. But now he comes to Saratoga and just dismantles this Forgo field.
Certainly did. Repeated his performance from Saratoga last year in the King's Bishop. I was not surprised by that performance at all. Drefong is going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, I know he was your single. Well done on that, sir. Most importantly, I think, and it was part of our thinking before the race, as good as that field looked on paper, there just wasn't much speed. So I think that helped Drefong a little bit during the race.
Yeah, certainly. And again, Mike Smith, not afraid to send his horse, it's something that's been discussed a good deal about races at Saratoga this season, that in some of these big races, riders have not been willing to just let their fast horses run on the lead and do what they know how to do. Mike Smith was not afraid to do that with Drefong and also with West Coast.
Exactly. And Drefong, I think it's rather easy to do. That horse just has a ton of speed. He is fast and he is classy, and he showed it again. Again, only 2 races this year. One, he dropped his rider, Mike Smith, in the first race out, but this Forgo already puts him back in the discussion for an Eclipse Award again this year. Hopefully we'll see him a couple more times this year, but he he is the horse to beat moving forward to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, no doubt, after Saturday. Matt, I think a lot of people were disappointed in the Travers in that there were so many horses to like in there, so their favorite probably didn't win. A bunch of people liked West Coast best, and they got their winner, but the majority of people were rooting or betting on another horse as their top horse. I think a lot of people were disappointed that Songbird went down to defeat, even though we've talked about Forever Unbridled being a very, very deserving winner of that race. So maybe there was the need for something to uplift everyone again, something to make people feel really, really good. And I think Lady Eli, the Boston spot, was only grade 2. It didn't matter. It was the grade 1 fillies that we've seen in New York this year. And this probably was Lady Eli's best race of her 5-year-old season yet.
Yeah, Brian, and it's interesting. You think back, a lot of people, when they saw how the card was laid out for the Travers and saw that Lady Eli was in the 12th race after the Travers, a lot of people said, hey, wait, hey, Lady Eli shouldn't be just after the main event. Well, you know what? I think it turned out to be an absolutely fabulous, fabulous decision by the racing office because, for me, that Lady Eli performance, that just gave me the emotional rush seeing her win again. She was all bottled up around the turn, and I just kept thinking of Tom Durkin's call with Cigar when he used the phrase, the pent-up power. That's exactly what I was thinking about Lady Eli on that turn. You could see she was loaded and ready to run, but Irad had to find some space for her, and when he did, she just exploded and beat a good field and drew off to one of the biggest margins of victory in her career. Just an absolutely fabulous, fabulous horse who has given us so much excitement over her 5-horse career. And Brian, as you wrote in a recent article, and folks, make sure you read it, it's time for Lady Eli to win an Eclipse Award. And is it totally out of the question that she could be Horse of the Year?
No, I don't think she's there yet. Maybe a little bit because of competition, maybe a little bit because dirt racing is bigger than turf racing. I certainly think she's been the best turf horse in America this year. She lost early at Keeneland, just barely to Dickinson in her return race, and then she's rattled off 3 nice wins in a row. It's hard to imagine that a horse this good has yet to win an Eclipse Award in her first 3 seasons on the track. But in her 4th season, I don't see anybody close to her in the filly and mare turf division. I think she's running away with that right now, even if somehow she gets beat in the Breeders' Cup, which I'm not predicting in any way, shape, or form in a mile 8th at Del Mar. But I think she will be a champion there. And yeah, she's in the Horse of the Year running. Irad Ortiz Jr. has rode her in all 13 races. You don't see that very often anymore, which is nice. Chad Brown, of course, is one of our best trainers in the country. And Lady Eli most likely is winding down her career. She's going to be sold as a breeding prospect in November. Most likely she will go to the breeding farm next year. So we're looking at 1 or 2 more races. She's run 13 times, Matt. She's won 10, all on the turf. Her 3 losses were not by much at all. She could be even better than 10 wins in 3 seconds out of 13. And obviously, we all love her even more for what she went through, stepping on a nail, contracting laminitis as a 3-year-old, as an unbeaten 3-year-old, battling through that, coming back, not only surviving, but coming back at such a high level. Lady Eli has been truly a heartwarming, inspirational story in horse racing. And to see her keep doing what she's doing so well is a joy. Matt, other big performances, By the Moon, I think was aided a little bit by a slow pace in the ballerina, but she held off Highway Star nicely. And Sadler's Joy really came running late in the Sword Dancer in what I thought was a pretty wide open race, and he proved that it was a pretty wide open race. But I'm still not sure about these older turf horses.
Yeah, and that was a great run for Sadler's Joy, who seemed to be the best one of the bunch coming out of the Boston Spa going into that race. The Euros didn't do well in there. Idaho hooked up into a speed duel and looked really washed out. It's not easy to ship over from Europe and contend when you're on the home field of a horse like Sadler's Joy.
Good performance there. By the Moon's been a nice filly. I never thought she was the best female out there, the best female sprinter out there, but she just continues to run good races now over the years, and she deserves a lot of credit for that big win, one of her biggest wins in the Ballerina. Out at Del Mar, there were some interesting 3-year-olds returning yesterday or this weekend. Paradise Woods unfortunately broke slowly in the Torrey Pines and then never ran a lick. We hope to see much better from her in the future. But Battle of Midway, after a tough race in the Haskell where he broke a little poorly and then he rushed up and then he kind of got cooked on the lead, he came back in a big way in the Shared Belief Stakes. Big win for Battle of Midway, and I think it sets him up nicely. I'm thinking probably Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile for Battle of Midway, who's one of the better 3-year-old males in the country.
Yeah, and certainly you have to keep in mind that this year at Del Mar, the Dirt Mile is around 2 turns, and I think that's a good thing for Battle of Midway.
Big performance out there for him. We're looking for another big weekend. We're not going to preview much this weekend. We're doing the show on Monday today. We expect Gun Runner to be the story of the holiday weekend, but there's stakes, graded stakes up and down the cards at Saratoga, Del Mar, and other places as well. I don't have anyone that's going to beat Gun Runner in the Woodward. Do you, sir?
I don't think so. Probably won't be too big a field. I don't think there's anybody of Gun Runner's caliber at all in that race. He should have everything his way going the 1 1/8 on closing weekend at Saratoga.
Hopefully we'll see Gun Runner do more of what he's been doing of late, and that's just run huge. Folks, thank you as always for watching HorseCenter. We appreciate it. Let me get a parting shot from you, Matt.
Brian, it's been a great year so far. September, that means we're 3/4 of the way done, and it'll be time to start thinking about the Breeders' Cup. And as always, I want to thank my friend and colleague, Brett Workman, for producing our show.
The great Brett Workman. Indeed. Thank you to Derby Wars. Our sponsor is the best contest site out there. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Horse Racing Nation, to watch every week. We will be back with another HorseCenter next week. We can't wait to see you then.